My wife spiked my drink at our 15th anniversary. She and my best friend planned to steal my business. A waiter's warning. Saved me, and I legally destroyed them. All right, Reddit. This happened 3 years ago, but I'm finally ready to tell the whole insane story. And when I say insane, I mean my wife literally lost her mind by the end. Buckle up, because this gets darker than a Tim Burton movie. I'm Rowan, 43 male. My wife Beth and I were celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary at Morton's Steakhouse. 15 years of what I thought was a solid marriage. I'd booked the private dining room, ordered a $200 bottle, bought her a $2,000 necklace. I'm sitting there thinking maybe we can fix whatever's been broken between us lately. Beth looked stunning in this red dress, but she'd been acting weird for months. Secretive phone calls, working late, constantly. That fake smile she'd perfected that never quite reached her eyes. I chalked it up to midlife marriage nonsense. The thing about running 3 restaurants and working toward opening a 4th is that you develop serious instincts about people. You learn to read customers, employees, suppliers. When someone's lying to you about food allergies or skipping out on checks, you pick up on the tells. Beth had been throwing off weird signals for months, but I kept making excuses. Marriage gets comfortable, right? People change, grow apart, whatever. But sitting across from her that night, watching her check her phone every 30 seconds and barely touch the $60 filet she'd ordered, my business instincts were screaming that something was seriously wrong. She kept looking toward the entrance like she was expecting someone, then overcompensating with forced conversation about our future together. I excused myself to hit the bathroom, and that's when everything changed. I'm washing my hands when our server Eli walks in. Kid was maybe 22, working his way through community college. He'd been solid all night. Good timing, professional but not kiss-up behavior. The kind of employee who actually gives a darn about his job. He looked around nervously, then walked up to me with this uncomfortable expression. "Sir, I'm probably going to get fired for this, but I think I saw something weird at your table." I'm thinking he's about to tell me Beth left her purse open or something equally mundane. Instead, he drops this bomb. "When you got up, I was clearing the table next to yours." Your wife looked around real careful-like, then pulled something small from her purse and dumped it in your glass. I've catered enough college parties to recognize the move. Quick dump of crushed pill or white powder, fast stir, eyes up. The kid had seen actual date rape attempts during his fraternity house catering gigs. He knew what he was looking at. I actually laughed. I cracked up like he'd told me the funniest joke ever. "Come on, kid. You sure about that?" His face was dead serious. Maybe I'm wrong. But if someone did that to my girlfriend's drink, I'd want to know. Even if it cost me my job. The laughter died faster than my faith in humanity. "Are you absolutely certain?" "Sir, I saw her pour something white into your glass and stir it quick with her finger. Could have been sugar, but it didn't look like sugar." And she looked around first to make sure nobody was watching. My brain started doing gymnastics. Beth? Drug me? Sure, we'd been having the usual midlife marriage problems. Less intimacy, more arguments about money, the standard deterioration. But poisoning seemed like skipping a few steps. "Maybe you misunderstood," I said, even though my gut was telling me otherwise. He shrugged. "Maybe. I hope so. But I had to tell you, my sister got roofied at a bar last year. I know what that stuff looks like." I stared at my reflection in the mirror. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of shared everything. And suddenly I'm wondering if my wife is trying to knock me unconscious. The restaurant business teaches you that people are capable of anything when money's involved. But this was my wife. "Thank you for telling me," I managed to say. I walked back to our table feeling like I was moving through quicksand. Beth was scrolling through her phone, smiling at something that was apparently more entertaining than our anniversary dinner. When she saw me approaching, she put on that practiced smile. "Everything all right? You look pale." "Just tired. Long week at the restaurants." We'd been pulling 70-hour weeks trying to secure financing and permits for our 4th location. The stress had been brutal, but I thought we were handling it together. Apparently, my wife had other plans for stress relief. There was my glass. The one that had tasted fine 20 minutes ago now looked suspicious as heck. "You know what? I think I'm going to switch to water. This drink is giving me a headache." Beth's response was telling. Her voice got this edge I'd been hearing more lately. "Really? You specifically picked that bottle. It's expensive. You can have mine too. I just need to pace myself." "Don't be ridiculous. We're celebrating 15 years. "Yeah, celebrating. Or planning a darn funeral. Hard to tell the difference at this point." I picked up my glass and pretended to drink, keeping my lips sealed. She watched me like a hawk. When I set the glass down, she visibly relaxed. Eli hung back with a clean view of the table. The private room entrance cam caught the hand move from a public vantage. No one's privacy got violated. That's when I knew Eli wasn't seeing things. My wife of 15 years had just tried to drug me at our anniversary dinner. The only question now was, what the heck was she planning after? Beth excused herself to the ladies' room. Order dessert if you want, honey. I'll be right back. The second she was out of sight, I moved. Switched our glasses, made sure they were positioned exactly where they'd been. My heart was hammering like it was trying to escape my chest. If Eli was wrong, no harm done. If he was right, well, we were about to find out exactly how far down the rabbit hole my marriage had fallen. While I waited, I started thinking about the logistics. If she was drugging me, she had to have an endgame. Rob me? But she had access to our accounts already. Kill? We had life insurance, but not enough to justify burger, unless there was money I didn't know about. The restaurant business generates serious cash flow when you're running multiple locations. We were clearing about $800,000 annually between the three places. Plus, I had investment accounts she knew about. But that's not flee the country money. Not unless someone was skimming more than I realized. She returned with that megawatt smile that was starting to look more and more fake. Did you order dessert? Waiting for you. What do you think about the chocolate cake? Perfect. You know I love chocolate. I watched her pick up the glass that had been mine. She took a long sip, then another. Started talking about her sister's wedding plans. How we should think about taking a vacation soon. Somewhere tropical, she said. Maybe Central America. I saw some Reddit threads saying it's easy to disappear down there. What kind of person researches extradition laws for vacation planning? The kind who's planning to need them, apparently. 20 minutes later, Beth stopped mid-sentence while describing some client's kitchen renovation. She blinked several times, looking confused. I feel strange, she said, her words starting to slur. Really dizzy. I leaned forward, channeling my inner concerned husband. Strange how? I don't understand. I only had a glass and a half, but Beth could out-tolerate most people and still hold court. We'd done tastings where she'd sample half the menu and stay sharp. This wasn't tipsy, this was pharmaceutical. Her words started trailing off. Her head tilted, and I caught her before she could faceplant into the breadbasket. Beth, can you hear me? She mumbled something incoherent. Her eyes were half closed, completely vacant. A couple at the next table started looking concerned. She's fine, I announced. She just can't handle her drink tonight. But I knew better. I called 911. While we waited for paramedics, I played the worried husband perfectly. Inside, though, I was asking myself the same question over and over. Why would my wife want to drug me? The paramedics arrived fast. They took her vitals, asked standard questions about medications and allergies. Any idea what she might have taken? The lead paramedic asked. Nothing that I know of. We were just having dinner. They loaded her onto a stretcher, and I followed the ambulance to Regional Medical Center. The whole drive, I kept processing the whole thing. At the hospital, the initial panel was vague. 2 days later, the confirmatory tox came back, showing a heavy sedative, benzo class. Any idea how this happened? The doctor asked. I almost laughed. If secretive behavior and attempting to poison your spouse counted as suspicious, then, yeah, I had some ideas. No clue. We were just celebrating our anniversary. The doctor was professional, but clearly suspicious. This type of drug isn't something you accidentally ingest. Someone would have to deliberately administer it. Are you saying someone drugged my wife? I'm saying the blood work shows a controlled substance that doesn't happen by accident. Security flagged it and notified PD. With no preserved glass and no witness statement, it went nowhere. Lesson learned. Cops took the report, but without a preserved glass or a signed witness statement, it was a dead end. Without video evidence or witnesses, and with Beth unconscious, there wasn't much to investigate. The prevailing theory was that someone at the restaurant had tampered with her drink, possibly targeting me but hitting her by mistake. She was unconscious for 6 hours. When she finally woke up, she was disoriented and claimed she couldn't remember anything after arriving at the restaurant. I don't understand, she kept saying. How did this happen? I barely had anything. The doctor thinks someone might have tampered with your drink, I said carefully. Her eyes went wide. Someone drugged me? Who would do such a thing? I don't know, honey, but I'm going to find out. That was the first completely honest thing I'd said since this nightmare began. The next day, I stayed home to take care of Beth while she recovered. She was weak, nauseous, playing the victim with solid commitment. I made soup, brought her tea, listened to her theories about who could have drugged her. Maybe it was that businessman at the bar, she suggested. He kept looking over at our table. Except there was no businessman at the bar. I'd been watching the whole restaurant. Could be, I agreed. Or maybe someone tampered with the bottle before service. That's terrifying. The performance was good. If I didn't know she was lying, I might have bought it. While playing the concerned husband, I was already planning my investigation. I needed to understand why she tried to drug me, and I needed proof. The restaurant business had taught me that when people start acting weird around money, you investigate fast and quietly. 2 days later, Beth announced she felt well enough to return to work. She ran her own interior design business, mostly high-end residential projects, the kind of flexible schedule that gave her plenty of freedom for extracurricular activities. I worked from home that day, telling my business partner Chase I was still dealing with Beth's medical situation. Chase had been my best friend since college, best man at our wedding, the brother I'd never had. We'd built our restaurant business together over the past 8 years, 3 successful locations with a 4th in development. I trusted him completely. Big mistake. We had started with one small place near campus, working 18-hour days and living on ramen. We'd grown it into a legitimate restaurant group through pure determination and complementary skills. I handled operations and customer relations. He managed finances and expansion planning. We'd never had a serious disagreement about business decisions. But lately, Chase had been pushing for rapid expansion, suggesting we leverage everything to open 5 new locations within 2 years. When I urged caution, he'd gotten defensive, claiming I was thinking small and wasting opportunities. I'd assumed it was standard partnership stress. During lunch, I did something I'd never done in 15 years of marriage. I searched my own home like a detective. Beth was obsessively organized about most things, but sloppy about hiding secrets. Started with her home office, going through files that were labeled with librarian-level precision. Her filing system was color-coded and alphabetized. Business expenses, tax documents, insurance policies. Took me an hour to find the first clue, a small appointment book tucked behind her regular calendar. Entries going back 6 months with just initials and times. CH 2 o'clock appeared twice a week, every week, like clockwork. CH Chase Hoffman. My best friend and business partner had been meeting my wife twice a week for 6 months, and neither of them had mentioned it. Coincidence? Doubtful. I kept searching. In her jewelry box, under the velvet tray where she kept her grandmother's earrings, I found a small plastic bag with white powder and a handwritten note. 1 to 2 packets. Effects in 15 to 20 minutes. Duration 4 to 6 hours. Be careful with amount. The handwriting wasn't Beth's. It was Chase's. My hands were shaking as I took photos with my phone. This was planned, researched, practiced. Beth had been studying how to drug me, and Chase was apparently her supplier and instructor. Her laptop password was our anniversary date plus her birth year. In a hidden folder labeled Vacation Research, I found months of email correspondence that made my blood pressure spike. The emails were coded but obvious once you understood the context. References to closing the deal Saturday, transferring the accounts, and confirming travel arrangements. Chase's messages mentioned preparing the documentation and ensuring a clean transition. Her responses discussed timing the implementation and managing the transition period. One particularly chilling exchange referenced ensuring R is completely out of commission for the transfer window. I found bank statements showing she had been moving money from our joint accounts into accounts I'd never seen. Small amounts at first, nothing that would trigger alerts. But over 6 months, she'd siphoned nearly $75,000 from our personal savings. The emails showed Chase had been doing the same thing with business accounts, using his authorization to make vendor payments to shell companies that existed only on paper. They had been systematically bleeding our assets for months. I found emails about travel arrangements, research on countries with favorable extradition policies, property listings for beachfront homes in Costa Rica with earnest money already paid. They'd been planning this for almost a year. The final kick to my emotional nuts came when I found the life insurance documents. Beth had pushed an increase on my existing work policy during open enrollment 4 months ago. Paperwork I e-signed in a stack she handed me. Beneficiary changes, higher cap, all a little too perfect. My 15-year marriage and 8-year business partnership had been systematically dismantled by the 2 people I trusted most. I sat in my home office, staring at evidence that should have been fictional. These weren't strangers or desperate criminals. This was my wife and best friend, people who'd shared holidays and birthdays and dreams with me, planning my destruction with the casual efficiency of a corporate merger. That night, she came home acting normal, asked about my day, complained about a difficult client, suggested ordering food from our usual place. "How are you feeling?" I asked over lo mein that tasted like cardboard. "Much better. Almost back to normal." Good. I was worried about you. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're such a good husband. I'm lucky to have you. I went to bed early, claiming exhaustion. She joined me later, curling up against me like she had for 15 years. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, planning exactly how I was going to destroy both their lives. I spent the next week gathering evidence like I was preparing for trial, because that's exactly what this was going to become. First stop, Nina Park, private investigator, former police detective, specialized in financial crimes and infidelity cases. I gave her everything I'd found and watched her eyes widen. Nina had seen plenty of marriage fraud and business embezzlement, but the combination with attempted burglary was apparently uncommon. This is extensive, she said, flipping through printouts. They've been planning this for months, but we need to understand the full scope before you make any moves. Nina was thorough and ruthless, my kind of investigator. She took a $5,000 retainer. All in, it ran close to $18,000. Surveillance, forensics, the works. Next, I called my lawyer, Paul Kearney. He'd handled our business formation and some personal matters over the years. Corporate law, mostly. When I explained the situation, I could hear him spit out his coffee. Good grief. Beth and Chase? I've known them both for years. I need divorce papers prepared, and I need to protect the business assets. I'll start immediately, but we need to be careful. If they suspect, they might move up their timeline. Kearney was smart enough to understand we were dealing with people who'd already demonstrated willingness to commit serious felonies. If they realized their plan was blown, they might panic and do something desperate. My brother Eric was next. He worked fraud investigation for the county, and when I showed him the evidence, he went full cop mode. They tried to drug you? That's attempted poisoning. Probably half a dozen felonies. We need to get this to the DA. Not yet. I want to catch them in the act. I want them to hang themselves. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time for another anniversary dinner. Eric understood the psychology. Let them commit to their plan completely. Gather evidence of them actually executing it, then watch them try to explain away video recordings and bank transfers. I'll need to recuse myself from the investigation since you're family, Eric said. But I know someone at the state level who can handle this properly. Detective Ray Castellanos. He's solid, and he specializes in financial crimes. The PI came back a few days later with information that made everything worse. Beth and Chase had been meeting at hotels twice a week for 8 months, but the financial planning was what really got me. They'd already moved $175,000 from our business accounts into cryptocurrency wallets. Beth had liquidated her retirement fund without telling me. They had fake IDs prepared under names I'd never heard, a rental property in Costa Rica under shell company names, and escape plans that would impress international fugitives. This isn't amateur hour, Nina said. Your business partner has experience with this. What do you mean? Chase Hoffman legally changed his name 6 years ago, 2 years before you started the partnership. His birth name is Jacob Henning, and he has priors for financial fraud in Nevada. Served 18 months for embezzling from a previous partner. The man I'd trusted with my business for 8 years was a professional con artist. He'd been playing the long game since before we ever met, changing his identity and building my trust while planning to eventually steal everything we'd built together. I spent the next few days acting normal while secretly preparing for war, moved most of our personal money into accounts Beth couldn't access, had my lawyer file paperwork to freeze business accounts on short notice. I put 2 cams in the kitchen and living room, common areas only, audio recordings only when I was present, one-party consent here. I also started carrying a voice recorder, hoping to capture Beth or Chase saying something incriminating during normal conversation. But the best part was watching her continue her performance. Still playing the loving wife, asking about my stress levels, suggesting romantic dinners. Maybe we should go back to Morton's, she said one evening while we were watching Netflix. Show them we're not intimidated. Great idea, I replied. How about this Saturday? I could see the excitement flash in her eyes before she controlled it. I'll make the reservation, she said. What she didn't know was that I'd already coordinated with Detective Castellanos. Not just at the restaurant, but with a trap so perfect it would make Wile E. Coyote jealous. But I needed to understand why Beth would risk attempting this again after her own traumatic ER experience. The answer came when I overheard a phone call between her and Chase. The first attempt failed because Eli interfered, Chase was telling her. He must have warned the kitchen staff about suspicious activity. They probably switched the glasses thinking they were protecting you from a random predator. Beth's voice was uncertain. But what if... Beth, we've invested too much to back out now. The transfers are already set up. The documents are ready. If we don't do this Saturday, we lose the Costa Rica property deposit and the flight reservations. Plus, I'm getting pressure from some people in Nevada. We need to disappear soon. Chase was getting nervous too. Started calling more frequently, asking weird questions about my health, my weekend plans, whether I'd been feeling tired lately. Just thinking about getting older, he said during one call. We should update our partnership agreement soon. Sure, but I'm planning to stick around for a while. Of course, man. Of course. The partnership agreement was probably their backup plan. If drugging me didn't work, they'd try to pressure me into signing documents that gave Chase more control over the business assets. By Friday, everything was in place. The restaurant was prepared, Detective Castellanos was briefed, the cameras were rolling. Beth and Chase had no idea their perfect crime was about to become their perfect nightmare. I called Nina for a final briefing. Everything ready? Detective Castellanos knows to expect your call Saturday night. Eli is prepared to testify about what he witnesses. The hidden cameras in your house have been recording all week. We have bank account numbers, travel itineraries, and evidence of the fake IDs. And if they don't take the bait, then we have enough evidence for conspiracy charges anyway. Beth and Chase had no idea they were walking into a trap. This was just another dinner service. Except instead of serving food, I was serving justice. Saturday night arrived. I'd been planning this for 2 weeks, and every detail was choreographed. Beth spent the day preparing like she was attending the Met Gala. When she emerged for dinner, she looked absolutely stunning. You look incredible, I told her. And I meant it. Thank you, honey. I wanted tonight to be perfect. Sure. We drove to Morton's in my BMW, with Beth practically vibrating with nervous energy. She kept checking her phone, probably coordinating with Chase. The restaurant looked exactly the same as 3 weeks ago, but now I knew what to watch for. Eli was working again. I'd specifically requested him. When he saw us, I caught the brief nod that meant he was ready. We'd talked during the week, and he knew what to watch for. More importantly, the restaurant manager had been briefed by Detective Castellanos about proper evidence collection procedures. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Carver. Welcome back. Thank you, Eli. Hoping for a better evening than last time. Beth smiled at him warmly. Yes, hopefully no more mysterious illnesses. We ordered the same drink as before. I kept my glass within sight, watching her every movement. She was more talkative than usual, asking about our future plans, retirement dreams, and what I wanted to accomplish. In hindsight, these were probably questions for my obituary. Do you ever think about just disappearing somewhere tropical? She asked while cutting her steak. Somewhere we could start fresh? Sometimes, I replied. Where would you want to go? Costa Rica seems nice. I hear it's beautiful there. The audacity was breathtaking. She was literally describing their escape plan while trying to drug me. Have you been researching Costa Rica? Just casual browsing. A girl can dream, right? Casual browsing that included property purchases and fake passport applications, apparently. Halfway through dinner, Beth excused herself for the ladies' room. As soon as she was gone, I signaled Eli, who positioned himself with a clear view of our table while alerting the manager. While she was gone, I started thinking. Chase was probably sitting in his apartment right now, refreshing banking websites and waiting for my text that I was unconscious. They thought they'd planned everything perfectly, but they'd never considered that I might be smarter than they were. She returned more relaxed. Her eyes kept darting to my glass. You're not having much tonight, she observed. Taking it slow. After what happened last time. Of course. Very wise. I excused myself for the restroom, but instead went where I could see our table through the glass partition. She was alone for maybe 40 seconds, but it was enough. I watched her look around the restaurant, then reach into her purse and pull out a small packet. She dumped it into what she thought was my glass, stirred it quickly with her finger, then wiped her hand on her napkin. She'd obviously practiced this. I waited another minute, then returned. She was smiling with satisfaction. Miss me? Always, honey. While she was texting, probably updating Chase, I quickly switched our glasses. My heart was pounding, but she was too focused on her phone to notice. I think I'll switch to water, I announced. This drink is stronger than expected. Panic flashed across her face. Seriously, again? She forced a laugh. This bottle is expensive. At least finish this glass. I really shouldn't. I want to drive safely. One more sip won't hurt. But I insisted on water and watched Beth reluctantly pick up the poisoned glass. She took several sips, probably calculating timing in her head. 20 minutes later, her eyes started getting glassy. Rowan, she said, words beginning to slur. I don't feel right. This is exactly what happened before. What's wrong? I pulled out my phone, but instead of calling 911, I called Detective Castellanos directly. I don't understand. She was gripping the table. How is this happening again? What do you mean, honey? What is going on? I could see she started losing it. The manager appeared immediately. Sir, I think we should preserve both glasses and contact the authorities. This looks like the same situation as before. He stashed both glasses in the office fridge and waited. Detectives collected and sealed them. Labels, photos, signatures, the whole chain of custody dance. Beth was barely coherent as the detective and paramedics arrived. As paramedics loaded Beth onto the stretcher, I looked down at my unconscious wife and said, "Sweet dreams, honey. When you wake up, you'll have some explaining to do." The best part was knowing that Chase was sitting in his apartment, probably panicking because he wasn't getting any text about me falling unconscious. Instead of executing their perfect plan, they were about to discover that their victim had turned their own plan against them. Detectives had already been pulling his emails and vendor payments for a week. After the restaurant sting, they served the warrant that weekend. Cash, passports, laptops still logged into banking portals. They found him with a laptop, $25,000 in cash, and fake passports for both of them. He was literally sitting there, refreshing banking websites, waiting for my text that I was unconscious so he could start transferring funds. Instead, he got a visit from detectives who were very interested in his financial activities. The arrest went smoothly initially. Chase cooperated, probably thinking his lawyer could get him out on bail while they figured out next moves. What he didn't expect was the mountain of evidence I'd compiled. Detective Castellanos told me later that Chase's first words were, "There's been a mistake. Rowan Carver is my business partner. We would never hurt each other." When they showed him the emails and bank records, his attitude changed fast. I want a lawyer. I'm not saying anything else. But Chase wasn't going down without a fight, and cornered animals bite. 2 days after his arrest, Chase made bail, $100,000 that he scraped together from who knows where. His first move was hiring Veronica Blackwood, an expensive defense attorney. His second move was trying to destroy me before I could destroy him. But the counterattack took several weeks to materialize. At first, Chase and his lawyer were quiet, probably hoping the charges would get reduced or dismissed. It wasn't until the prosecutor leaked to the media that they had recordings and financial evidence that Chase went nuclear. Chase knew where the bodies were buried in our business. We'd cut corners over the years, nothing illegal, but creative accounting that could look suspicious under scrutiny. Employee tax situations that were technically compliant but aggressive. Vendor relationships that involved cash payments to avoid credit card fees. Over the next 2 months, he drip-fed tips to whoever would listen. First came the IRS audit notice, then the surprise license review, then a health inspection that just happened to land on a Friday rush. The IRS audit was particularly vicious. They wanted 3 years of records, employee timesheets, vendor contracts, everything. When you're running 3 restaurants, that's thousands of documents and hours of preparation. This is harassment, my accountant said. Someone called in specific allegations about cash skimming and employee misclassification. I knew exactly who that someone was, but that was just the opening move. Chase's lawyer started shopping a story about how I'd framed my innocent business partner and unstable wife. According to their narrative, I was an abusive husband who'd driven Beth to a breakdown, then fabricated evidence when she tried to leave. The story was nonsense, but compelling nonsense. Meanwhile, Beth was having a complete breakdown in county lockup. She started calling me from jail, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful apologies to screaming threats to completely unhinged rants. The jail put her on suicide watch after she tried to harm herself with a bedsheet. Her latest delusion was that Chase had been mind-controlling. According to her, she was the real victim of an elaborate con. Her parents hired a psychiatrist who declared Beth incompetent to stand trial due to acute stress-induced psychosis. Suddenly, she was a victim of mental illness instead of someone who'd tried to poison her husband. But I had recordings. Hours of video recordings from the cameras I'd installed, capturing Beth and Chase planning my drugging with the calm professionalism of event planners. When the prosecution played those recordings in court, you could watch the defense attorney's soul leave her body, Beth's voice clear as day, discussing logistics and timing. But the recordings had to be introduced carefully. The hidden cameras in my home captured video without audio to avoid consent issues. The audio recordings were from conversations where I was present, making them admissible under one-party consent laws. The combination painted a clear picture of premeditation and conspiracy. Chase's strategy shifted to scorched earth. Since he couldn't prove innocence, he decided to burn everything down. He contacted our employees, claiming I was closing all locations. He reached out to suppliers, suggesting they demand immediate payment because the business was bankrupt. He even called Beth's parents, spinning stories about how I'd been planning to divorce her and leave her with nothing. The chaos was incredible. Two of my best servers quit, believing Chase's lies about the restaurant's closing. Suppliers started demanding cash on delivery. Customers stayed away because of the negative media coverage. Chase was trying to destroy what we'd built together, figuring if he was going down, he'd take everything with him. But here's the thing about trying to destroy someone who's already survived attempted poisoning. It tends to backfire. Every move he made just provided more evidence of his vindictive character. Every manipulation just proved he was exactly the kind of sociopath who would plan to destroy his best friend for money. But the best part? Watching them turn on each other. Beth's lawyer claimed Chase had manipulated her into the scheme. Chase's lawyer argued that Beth was a psychopath who'd seduced him into betraying his best friend. The prosecution just sat back and watched them destroy each other's credibility. 6 months later, I was sitting in court watching my wife and former best friend dig their own graves. I won't bore you with the prosecution, but let me tell you, the real fireworks? When they testified against each other. Beth took the stand first, wearing orange and the wild-eyed look of someone who'd been binge-watching conspiracy documentaries. She accused him of everything from fraud to psychological warfare. He showed me fake documents proving my husband was laundering money through the restaurants, she testified. I thought I was protecting myself from a dangerous criminal. The prosecutor calmly showed that all those documents had been created by Chase using basic photo editing software. Beth had been so desperate to believe I was the villain that she'd accepted obviously fake evidence. Did you verify these documents? The prosecutor asked. I trusted Chase. But you didn't call the bank to confirm the account numbers? I was scared. Chase said my husband might hurt me if he found out I knew. She'd convinced herself that drugging me was actually protecting herself from an abusive husband, even though I'd never raised my voice to her in 15 years. Chase's testimony was even better. He threw Beth under the bus with the force of a freight train. She came to me with this plan, Chase testified. She'd been researching ways to destroy her husband that would look accidental. She showed me insurance policies, detailed financial records, even test runs. The prosecutor played video recordings of him discussing methods and escape routes. Mr. Henning, in this recording, you discuss alternative approaches if the initial plan doesn't work. Whose idea was that? I was just brainstorming. Beth was so determined to get rid of him, I was trying to talk her out of violence. By suggesting alternative methods? I was trying to steer her towards something less risky. The jury looked like they were watching a train wreck in slow motion. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. The DA charged attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering. Chase got hit with the same charges plus additional counts for his previous fraud under his real name. Right before verdicts would have landed, they both pled down to attempted poisoning, which is how Beth got 8 years with the possibility of parole in 5. Chase got 12 years due to his priors and the financial scope of the crimes. But that was just the beginning. The civil suits were where I got creative. I sued both of them for damages, seized their assets, garnished their accounts. Beth's parents had to refinance their house to pay legal fees. Chase's ex-wife lost her savings to victim restitution. I also sued Beth's business for facilitating fraud. Her company had been used to move stolen funds. Her employees lost their jobs, her clients sued for breach of contract, and her professional reputation was destroyed. Beth's sister had to postpone her wedding because of the scandal. Chase's parents moved to another state to escape the embarrassment. The restaurant industry blacklisted both of them. Chase will never work in food service again. Beth's interior design clients all terminated their contracts. 2 years later, I'm running 4 restaurants instead of 3. The 4th location is in the downtown business district, targeting lunch crowds and after-work happy hours. Revenue is up 40% across all locations, and I've hired 6 new employees. Eli got promoted to assistant manager and finished his business degree. He's now dating a sweet girl who's never attempted to poison anyone, which I consider a significant improvement. Beth is serving her sentence at the state facility, where she makes license plates and receives therapy for her psychological issues. Last month, she sent me a letter claiming the judge was compromised and the jury was influenced by patriarchal bias. She's planning to write a book about her experience as a victim of the justice system. Right. Chase had a minor stroke last year, stress from prison life, and is currently in the medical ward. I sent a card that read, "Thinking of you during this difficult time. Hope you're enjoying retirement." The house Beth and I shared is now a rental property, generating decent income. I live in a downtown condo with a view of the harbor and no memories of attempted poisoning. Last month, I got a call from prison. You have a collect call from an inmate. Will you accept charges? I knew exactly who it was. Rowan? Thank God you answered. It's Chase. His voice sounded broken. Listen, man, I need your help. My appeal got denied, and my health is garbage in here. These guys know what I did, and they don't like people who betray their friends. I'm sure they don't. Rowan, we were brothers for 10 years. That has to count for something. Brothers don't try to rob each other, Chase. It wasn't my idea. Beth manipulated both of us. She destroyed our friendship, our business, everything. I let him talk for another minute, listening to him blame everyone but himself. You done? I'm dying in here, Rowan. I had a stroke. My blood pressure is through the roof. Just help me get a reduced sentence. I'll sign over whatever assets I have left. Chase? Yeah? Rot in hell. I hung up. He called back 3 more times that night. I didn't answer. Beth will be eligible for parole when she's 50, assuming she regains enough sanity to convince a board she's not dangerous. Chase will probably die in prison, still wondering how his perfect scheme became a perfect disaster. Sometimes the best revenge is letting your enemies destroy themselves. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.